on the phone, not Louimi, someone else who's done a research study. Do you want to join the call and just hear me doing the training, or should I?
No.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
Really good. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. Where are you?
I'm in Washington State.
Okay, lovely. I'm in
Yeah.
Devon, in England.
Oh man, you're kind of far.
Yeah, well, small planet with Zoom.
Exactly. Thank you for meeting up.
Not at all, not at all. And I'm sure you'll gather very quickly what we can do with this technology and perhaps what you've been missing and what potentially it can add to your research in the future. Because, we're here to encourage people like you to do exciting projects. So couple of things. First thing is I'm recording this call because it might be useful for both you and I. I can send you the audio easily, but I can also probably send you the video file or share it somehow. So it's on that basis that I'm going to share the screen with you. So you can see my screen, but you can also see obviously my mouse when I'm pointing to different areas. And I think that's a significant thing. So can you now see my screen?
I can.
Okay, well, it looks remarkably like you, but we'll assume it's some other fellow for the minute.
Yeah, it's not. It's actually a friend.
Okay, well, the good thing is that if he's a friend, you can make a few notes and you can refer back to him some of the key items we're seeing and recommendations. And to be honest, I'd rather do this completely cold rather than you tell me anything about any of these people, because it'll then be we find the more incredible it is, the more easy it is to transfer our knowledge and understanding. So basically what you've got here is just one front shot image taken in what we call chakra viewer mode. And you're right, you can't actually recognize who the person is. So it's quite a useful training filter, if you like. And it also speaks to the chakras, which are anatomical features of the human biofield that are not that well understood, certainly in modern scientific parlance. But I'll show you how we interpret an image. What I would say, though, is that normally I would have a set of about 16 different images, a front, a side, a back, 4 at least of the top half of the body in 2 different filters, and then to a certain extent of the legs. But obviously, having developed this technology over 30 years ago, I'm able to first of all establish whether an image is able to be read. In other words, whether the artifacts of shadow or lighting or whatever kind of overwhelm the ability to interpret the image, or whether even if there is some artifact, what can be picked out. But these are really well taken images, so we're in a very good place. And so I think it would be sensible to start, and it may even help you to understand what your brain reboot process is achieving on lots of different levels. So the first thing we always talk about when we're interpreting an image, a biofield, chakra, 3D image, is symmetry. Because even though our faces and our bodies have asymmetries, we have a mole or a different sort of line on the side of our face, or one earlobe may be different. But the simple fact, because the biofield itself is a spinning vortex, the sense of symmetry is absolutely crucial, because otherwise it would wobble. The integrity of symmetry is totally the fundamental of the human biofield. So whenever we see asymmetries, that's where what we call the focal point in an image, something that draws our eye. And it's where the human interpretation becomes so significant, because we're able to identify these asymmetries. And I'll give you an example. You can see my little cross here. A clear asymmetry is here in this gentleman. And interestingly, in the follow up, the after shot, it really is significantly reduced that area. Another area that I think is showing some asymmetry is up here on the left shoulder, kind of on the clavicle and going down into the chest. And again, it does seem to become a lot more symmetrical in the after image. There are still some traces of the original asymmetry, but it's certainly brighter and more symmetrical in the second image. So just by interpreting the first image, what I can tell you about this gentleman is, I like to discuss the things that have caught my eye, the focal points, and then perhaps explain why we then say what we do about those asymmetries. So, for example, this area, the torso, is pretty much in the scape of the navel chakra. And as you may know, in the Vedic tradition, it's known as Svadhisthana. And that always relates to the second element, water. The first chakra relates to earth. The second chakra relates to water. And as you know, water is all about emotions. A woman's cycle is controlled by the moon in that region. And in fact, all natural cycles are. We take the coconuts down from the trees at full moon because that's when they're full of coconut water. So this connection between fluid, water, the second element, emotions, all revolve around the second chakra. And it's an emergence into space. And the first person a child sees is its mother, the brother, the other. You know, these early bonds, these early relationships all form out of that second chakra. And so when we see nice, thin, symmetrical lines running down through the torso, which we mostly see in this image, it's a really good sign that this fellow's well integrated into his family. And generally, we can say from the picture, the left side of the picture, which is his right side, relates to things that are men, you know, brother, father, grandfather, ancestral fathers, but also work, office, that kind of stuff. And the other side of this torso midriff area, from an emotional family perspective, is the mothers, the sisters, the wives, the daughters, and the home life. Because we draw energy in through the left side and we pass it out through the right. So it's a female receiving energy coming into the right, and the male kind of expressive energy coming into the left and going out to the right. So what we're seeing here under my little crosshairs is a kind of pattern that we call shielding. Okay, and we call it shielding because we honor the person we're viewing in our soul mirror. And we say, this person is doing that, maybe subconsciously, but they're doing that for a reason. What we don't say is, oh, that's congested energy, it's a blockage. We don't say that. Technically, there is congestion there. But in order for someone to own their state, and then improve it to optimization, as you are doing with your fabulous brain reboot system, it seems. It's really good to know where you are to start with, you know. And I think this is why the Biofield Viewer screening process is so interesting for people, because it opens a channel of trust. They very quickly know that you know what you need to know to help them, because you're identifying things that maybe they only know. And so it's quite important to get the questions right. For example, if you look at any emotional map, you can Google them on the human biofield or the human energy field or whatever term you want to use, you will find maybe 50 different maps. A lot of the different modalities like Reiki and pranic healing, some of the more modern ones like biofield tuning, but you know, muscle testing, kinesiology, they all have wonderful training guides of where the emotions are stored in the human body. So for example, in there's a corroboration. So it's not like each one says a different story and you're scratching your head how to interpret it. And so for us as scientists, we were delighted to be able to develop a technology, but to develop it alongside a uniformity, even though the world view perhaps doesn't accept this understanding as yet. But there's a corroboration between all the scientists and all the professional practitioners that do, and that's really important. And the reason why I'm saying that, because we can talk about examples. For example, the chest is often connected with sadness and grief. And so when we see this kind of shielding on the chest, and to be honest, this fellow's got just maybe 5 or 10% shielding. So I would ask him, not, are you sad? I wouldn't ask him that question. I'd say, what are you sad about? You know, because I know there is a little bit of sadness in there. And it gives him the confidence to answer the question rather than say no.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because I've stepped in a little bit closer and I said, I know you've got some sadness because you're wearing it like a set of medals. Write that. He's wearing them like a little set of medals. So this could be the grief of his grandfather who passed in the last year or two, or it could be the the deflected, spurned love, a university girl who he just, she was committed to somebody else by some, astrological contract. And, there's all kinds of things that we have to deal with. But interestingly, in your image, after treatment, he's come in to face this stuff. And even in your study, he seems to be able to respond to it. And I think that's great. You kind of rebooting, that's what it seems that you're doing. So in this sense, my 2 questions for this gentleman are, as I said, what are you sad about? You got a little bit of sadness you're wearing. And then, I've softened it so that he's comfortable to answer the question. And if he says to you, oh, no, I'm not sad about anything, then you would say, well, have you lost anyone? Because it's sadness and grief. And there is a great deal of confidence about this because we're in chakra viewer mode, which is the map of the emotions. If we were in Biofield Viewer mode, I may say, is he getting exposed to kind of airborne toxicity? And it could be something like that. But I'm more confident to speak to the emotional perspective from these images. And in the same way with the area down here above your lovely R, that pooling there that we call shielding, that could relate, for example, to some actual digestive instability, like he's got gas, or his digestion is a weak spot. And funnily enough, it'll often be, he has an argument with his girlfriend or his father or something, and suddenly his digestion gets upset. This is the barometer for your family well-being. If you sit on the pot every day at the right time and everything's happy and flow is good, whatever, you can be pretty sure your family's sorted as well. But if you've gotten a bit upset in the digestive system or something really chronic like irritable bowel or leaky gut, then it's family matter, and that's where you need to look. So again, your treatment has kind of treatment influence reboot process. I mean, I'm encouraged by your transformations. So as you can see, we get quite specific. Now let's zoom in on your subject one's face. And what you'll notice is that there are certain pink patterns, basically either side of his jaw. Okay, down here, there's a pink line here, and there's a pink hot spot here, and quite a lot going on down through this left side. And if he was with me now, I would say to him, or even his wife, do you know if you're clenching at night? Are you a clencher? Do you not necessarily grind your teeth, but clench your teeth? And I'd be pretty sure he does. And the reason why I'm pretty sure is, well, there's several reasons. One, because the actual pattern of it is in his jaw, but also he's got quite a few things to be clenching about. Now, look again what happens when I zoom in on his shoulders. Okay, now look at his left shoulder. Okay, it's already touching the bottom of my screen, but his right shoulder is almost, you know, 1.5 inches up here. Yeah. So let's look down the bottom of the image and see if we're seeing the same kind of imbalance on his short trousers. You see, there's one point of his trousers there, and the other one's right under the R. But we'll just lower it down, and actually they're about the same. So something's gone on with your friend here, and you notice this hot spot here on his right shoulder and down through here. This is a muscle that is taut and is pulling up his right shoulder. Now, this could be too much computer mouse action in a dodgy chair. Or it could be he came off a bicycle over the handlebars when he was 7 years old, and this trauma got impacted into that shoulder, and now he's sitting in a dodgy chair in front of a mouse too much and not conscious of his own ergonomics. But that's basically created this rather bizarre twist in his shoulders and upper neck, which obviously is going to be painful. So, and that's what's causing him to clench. And the other thing is that, I'll tell you, this guy is a saintly being. He is a divine being. And the only thing that's holding him back from living a really blissful divine life is he's vacillating from being a very human person to accepting his divinity. And what this vacillation does is, I can't, you know, just I've got to go to work and earn the money. No, totally abundant, you know, the planet, nature, whatever it is, vacillating between these two states. It creates a state not of mindfulness, but of mentalizing. So you're thinking, not just thinking, but thinking too much. And to be honest, if this wasn't a public broadcast, I would say mind fucking. You know, there's degrees of mentalizing which get too much, and it's like, and the guy starts clenching his jaw at night because all these 2,000-3,000 nerves are coming down through the TMJ here. And so he's clenching his shoulders up, and he's a beautiful divine being loitering at the gate of his sacred opportunity because he's thinking about it. And that's ironic. And my recommendation, therefore, is to address this shoulder issue with deep tissue kind of massage, osteopathy, someone who knows what they're doing, to release all the tight muscles in the right hand side of his, I bet his rib cage has got some really sore spots. Tell him to press and find, I don't know, his partner, whatever. He needs that. He needs to unlock this thing. Then he needs to buy himself a decent chair. Then he needs to cut a deal with himself that if he's going to spend 2 hours programming, he's also going to spend an hour walking around in the park barefoot, because you can't just borrow your own energy. And I mean, computer terminals are called terminals for a reason, because it's the end of the line. And you don't want to end up terminal yourself playing around with one. You know, it's to get in there and do your business, and then get out there and be glad that you're able to do your business on a computer that is liberating, and not to mess up this relationship. And the main area that I've spoken to, I've spoken about is digestion, but I want to know, what is the frustration, if you like, the issue that's encouraging him to shield? Is his dad saying, oh, you should be married, you should be home by now, sending a bigger check, or whatever it is? Is there some male kind of invasion of his space, his boundaries, that he's having to put a shield up to? Or is this a sort of work type of frustration that echoes into the family life, because it's that part of you that's bringing home the the income and what have you. So these are the questions I'd be asking him. You know, what are you having to put your shields up that's boy man related? Is this a dad brother son thing, or is this a work type of thing? And so my best recommendation for my friend here, alongside your treatment, which is clearly addressed all of the areas to a certain extent, because you've allowed his mentalizing to calm. That's the best thing you've done. You've allowed him to kind of get settled on lots of different levels emotionally because his mind has been calmed. I'm pretty impressed, to be honest, by whatever it is that you're doing. I don't have any idea what it is, but I know my images. So as long as these are taken true before and afters, then I can big up what you've done here. So yeah, well done you. And, you know, to a certain extent, so this guy is a kind of A-grade health kind of person. And we're just niggling about, is he going to get, you know, Ivy League energetically? So he's already drinking champagne. He doesn't have to do anything. I'm not giving him any instructions. The only thing I recommend is to dive into breath work, because this is something he does on his own all day, conscious breathing, and he keeps traumatizing himself by holding his breath. It's the one thing he's doing, and that allows the mind to mentalize. So if he focuses on what I call conscious breathing, but there's so many different methods, you may have a recommendation yourself. But the point is, if he embraces conscious breathing, he will naturally stop, dare I say, mind fucking so much, as your technology does, holds him in that space for however many hours it does. But for a real surge, you know, the way we look at it from our perspective is you have to choose what you're going to do, yeah, and then you have to claim it. You have to claim that healing you've had. You have to hold it, otherwise it'll just slip back into the relationships and the environment that you're in. So you have to choose it, you have to claim it, and you have to own it. And a pair of images like this allows this young man to know, I came in with this baseline here, okay? And now, look, woof, a few hours of roots, wellness, brain balancing, excuse me, I'm a brain reboot process. You know, he's clearly 80% improved. And if he holds it and owns it, then for him, it was just like a, you know, like a tug that needed a service, and he visited Louis, and he gave him his annual service, and off he goes again, which is a huge endorsement of your work, sir, whoever you are. I've never met you before. It works, and you're doing great. And I guess that's the beautiful thing about seeing what people are doing, because the endorsement doesn't have to be, yeah, look, I checked my tea leaves and they said this guy's cool. I can tell you for a fact, this is banging. Now, this is another interesting one. I mean, I still can't ask you what it is that you're doing, but I am impressed. It's a very interesting image, this one, because I guess this is a slightly older gentleman than the one we saw previously. He certainly has some kind of dental issues that are catching my eyes in the asymmetry of the chakra viewer image around his face. And as we zoom in, obviously we can see that more clearly, and it's kind of hot pink as well. And so I would suggest to this gentleman, if you could write this down, in addition to your sessions, I would highly recommend what we call oil pulling, which is basically gently swilling coconut oil, especially into the back of the teeth there. It seals up those minute fissures in the teeth and all the bacteria. And it's like a coral reef for a bacteria party in the back of his mouth. And with a regime of oil pulling, I recommend, 10 days a month, or 5 days on, 10 days off, 5 days on, something like that. You can really knock it on the head. I say that type of schedule, especially with older people, because our teeth do tend to be a little looser in the gums anyway. And if you did it all the time, that wouldn't necessarily be a good thing. So just a little regime of it. But otherwise, this guy's in pretty good condition, this person, I should say. The other area that is asymmetrical is again down here in the digestive system. It's kind of left side. And it's interesting because there's so much, we aren't really talking about colors, you've noticed, but when we do see these sort of hot pinks, we know that there's some shielding in there from an emotional perspective, in this case more towards the feminine. So this guy could be, sad about something that his wife has done, or his daughter, or just not in communication with one of his daughters, and that's upsetting him. But it's really important for him to face this stuff, because then his digestion will improve and he won't need to take meds or anything, or even keep coming back to you. Now, there's a lot of pattern coming through under your logo across his hips, and it's significant, even though they could be, say, nylon trousers reflecting that, and therefore it could just be completely artifact. But the way the image looks to me, I've got a sneaking suspicion there is something going on in his hips, although his shoulders are nice and straight. If you look here, as I zoom in, his shoulders, his left shoulder is a little bit higher than his right shoulder, actually. It's not as nearly as much as your previous subject, because that gentleman, I think, is probably really doing something sort of ergonomically compromised with his computer desk and so forth. But with this gentleman, I don't see that in a kind of, repeated activity, because he's got lots of implications that he's quite loose and comfortable. So really it's a dental thing, and it's working out what it is at home with his wife or his daughter or his family that's got his digestion a little upset, and to face it. Probably best thing to do is to give all the girls a couple of days in the spas of their choice, and then and that's probably about the right place to start, just to honor the women in our lives, and just facilitate whatever it is they want to do. If they want to do a course, or they need a mani pedi, whatever it is, go for it. Knock yourself out. A beautiful wine box full of herbs, something that's going to trigger that beautiful goddess in your house to not be subconsciously on your back.
Correct.
And that you've got to show that every day. Do the washing up for a week, and set the balance back in the home. That's what this guy could face. And again, lots of yellow, which means a little bit too much thinking. And so by the time we jump over to your what do we call it? Your protocol, your impact. It's really, yeah, it's impressive, definitely. And so I guess the reboot process has an opportunity for someone to claim, even, it's like a realization opportunity in a way. One of the ironic things about those of us who claim realization is that when you first realize you're realized, that first moment you also realize you've always been realized. And so it's this ironic kind of dragon tail dance, but that's true for everybody. If one is, then we all are. And it's this ironic distraction from what we really need to do every morning when we actually wake up and we have a wakeful day. Spending a lifetime wondering how grass the greener over is there in enlightenment, miss the fact that we're enlightened every morning when the alarm goes off, you know, by the sun, by our own consciousness. And it's one of the greatest ironies on earth that the butterfly you think you're looking for has been sat on the end of your nose your whole life. And it seems to me that's what this brain rebooting is doing, certainly from my perspective. You're showing someone the kind of scenic route to the top of their own mountain, and they're going, yeah, I like this, and they're kind of going for it. And I think that's brilliant. And that's, to be honest, why I'm so happy to run through these cases with you in this way, because this is hot shit, basically. This is really good. Whatever you're doing, it's really good. And I mean, obviously, to add my contribution from a scientific perspective, I would need to have all of the images and all of the timelines and really know everything about this study. But this study was done by other colleagues, and I totally respect their abilities. I just haven't got all the bits that I would need to make my words here official. But, you know, it wouldn't be difficult for them to be aligned, and I'd be more than happy to approve that for this recording if I was 100% sure what I think I'm seeing is what I'm seeing, if you know what I mean.
Exactly.
So let's speak to this subject number 2. I don't know how I jumped one. I'm sorry about that. But subject number 2, and it's good that you've got people of different ages.
I don't think it's moving the screen, subject number 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. There was something that went on just then. I don't know. I'll come back to it and see what happens. Can you see it now?
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay, great. So, I mean, this is another interesting case. I mean, to be honest, all your subjects are in a pretty good condition to start with. Just the first gentleman has that shoulder issue from a mechanical perspective. And I think the older gentleman has got something going on with his hips. And I wouldn't be surprised he's got prolapsed arches or something, you know, for lifelong on his feet. And his ankles and his knees might be a bit sore. That would be, even though obviously I couldn't see that part of his body, but that's my hunch about that gentleman. And my recommendation from him, apart from oil pulling, would be barefoot grounding, you know, 20, 30 minutes a day on his fabulous lawn. And if he doesn't have a lawn, then he needs to move house and get one. You know, he needs that earth connection. Otherwise it's just not pretty. If you stay in the city too long, as we age, we need more of a connection with the earth. He should be growing his own carrots by now if he isn't, you know, good as nails in the mud. Okay, so this young lady, she's really good, I would say. She thinks too much. Again, you know, we're now addressing first symmetry, which is the pooling. Again, pretty similar spot to the first gentleman. And this is like, you know, this lady is shielding because she has an issue with men. So maybe she gets too much attention, say on public transport or whatever, and so she has to literally wear a cloak because she's got the pheromones, you know, she's attractive. And obviously in the Biofield chakra viewer image, you can't really see the age or the exact, so I'm apologizing to this lady if I'm embarrassing her or she's too young for me to be talking about her in this way. I apologize, but ultimately I think that's what's happening. And so it's really important for the real men in her life to be giving her good kind of examples of what real men do and what good men are like, and just role models. And just, you know, I hope she's got a good, nice boyfriend if she's in that phase in her life. And, you know, but there is a sense that that's her trigger issue. Again, with your session, it seems to be kind of, you know, it's actually vacillating a bit. In other words, you're focusing, your technique seems to encourage people to focus on their stuff. And I think that's fascinating. And yet, yeah, I mean, this image is, I mean, if I see, it's probably not any more symmetrical, the image, because we're losing symmetry on the yellow color on the chest in the after image. But pixel for pixel, it could be, because we really have seen a big reduction in that pink at the navel. There is some appearing on the other side, which would balance out the symmetry of it. And then the arms are much more, well, certainly the shoulders are. I think it's a close run thing. I mean, I'm very fascinated by this person's eyes. When we see pink eyes like that, it often means something like computer eye strain or mobile phone eye strain, but it can mean something else. It can mean that they've got an undiagnosed, you know, short-sightedness or long-sightedness. That's as far as I'd like to go at the moment, Louis. But in other cases, it can mean a kind of interruption by entities, if you can be big enough to digest that. So, you know, I don't think that that's what I'm seeing here, but when I do see it, and when we do know that there's some kind of possession, that's one of the one of the facets of it, let's say. So, you know, what to say? So this girl needs guidance. You know, I may be wrong about that, and I'm happy to put my hand up and say, listen, I didn't say that she was. I just said that it's a facet of that situation. And if it's not eye strain or actual undiagnosed eye condition, then it'd be interesting to see if, you know, someone else thought, or maybe she felt, or whatever, that there could be some maybe relative, like her grandmother, who's visits her, and is actually maybe like a kind of a limpet, you know, on her shoulder, and just sort of rather abusing her kindness and wanting a free ride around this current dimensionality. So, you know, she's a big thinker, this girl. So I would recommend that the best gift I could give her is breath work. I say dive into breath work, dive into pranayama, dive into conscious breathing, dive into whatever it is that, you know, some YouTube, Danny Paradise, I don't know, somebody who's going to trigger her, maybe another young yoga teacher who speaks that young lady's language. I don't know, just somebody who she can connect with. And because you can tell her this, and to the first gentleman, from me, the breath is like a gearbox, okay? And by the looks of your mentalizing, you're driving around in first gear. So you have a whole second, third, fourth, fifth gear, and then the entire sports gearbox to experience with the breath, which means don't just shallow breathe subconsciously. That's first gear. Really, you know, explore breath. I mean, we can't alter many things in our life. I can't suddenly change the color of my hair or improve my eyesight. I can't suddenly make my arms longer, but I can suddenly change the amount of oxygen I breathe in. And there's a reason for that.
Correct.
Okay, I'm out of here, dude. I think I've done what I wanted to do, which was speak to you about your 3 sets of images. I want to congratulate them on all of them. I want to know more about your Roots Wellness Center and your Brain Reboot Process, but on another call, because we can cut this into 3 recordings, which you can digest and share with your 3 colleagues, and I can share with my students on our training private group, because the identities are unknown. There's subject 1, 2, 3. I presume they've all signed up for this, and with your permission, I will do that.
Yep, that's fine.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, lots of love to you, man, and let's arrange another call whereby we do this, and I will share the audio with you on the email as soon as it's uploaded or whatever it's going to be doing on its own. And yeah, so let's speak again, and maybe if you want to get hold of our equipment yourself, you'll be surprised how accessible it is. And obviously I'd like to pitch you all the way up the stairs, but I'm going to be very gentle and soft sell you and just tantalize you until we next meet.
Absolutely. That I'm actually pretty interested with it. I've been looking into it for a while.
Cool. Well, we absolutely will fail. We will not fail to deliver, my friend, and in all ways, especially with things like the training, which is so important. You know, we've got hundreds of practitioners all around the world who work and vouch with and for us. So it's all brilliant. I'm looking forward to where are you again? You're in Washington. Yeah, I'm sure.
Washington State.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll bump into each other. I'm often in Colorado, so as long as the place isn't on fire, I'm sure we can get about.
Absolutely. I would love to.
All right. God bless you, mate. I'm going to ring off and we'll speak soon.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Bye.
Bye.